Hey guys, it's Amber with the WOW Creative team, and today I'm heat embossing with the Riviera Trio, which is a great set of chunky embossing powders. Starting off with the stamp mark at Hexagon Hello, I'm going to use the largest hexagon to set up my pattern. I'll stamp this in a soft gray ink. This is Silver Lake from Altenew, and I want to start it off the page, and then I'll continue the pattern with some solid stamping. Here I have the small solid stamp from the set, and I'm inking it up with the WOW Ultra Slow Drying Clear Embossing ink. And I am going to stamp each of these twice so that I get good coverage. Once I have that stamped down, I'm going to sprinkle on Serene from the Riviera Trio set. And this has some really chunky black and white powders in it. And so I'm just going to pick those up and sprinkle those on by hand. This is a beautiful teal color. It's nice and soft, but the high contrast with the black dots and the white is so beautiful. And you can see how nicely that embosses. It also has a fine glitter in it. So I've stamped this again, and this time I'm going to use the Provencal. So this one, to me, looks like it has more glitter in it than the Serene did. And so you can see I didn't get as good of a coverage there. So I went ahead and heat embossed what I had down. I'm going to re-stamp it, and then I'm going to sprinkle on a second layer of this. And I think this was necessary because there seems to be a little more glitter to embossing powder ratio here. Like there's a little more glitter in this powder, which makes it really beautiful, but you might just need a second coat like I did here, which was really easy to do because I had left the stamp in my MISTI. So here you can see all of that very, very fine glitter, and I'm just knocking that off with a paintbrush and then getting that good and melted. For my last hexagon, I'm using Genteel, and you can see that has great coverage, and then I'm just going to sprinkle on a few more of those black and white chunky embossing powders and get that all melted. I finished off the card by stacking some Hello die cuts from the Altenew Bold Greetings die set, and look at all that shimmer from the glitter. I think these powders are just absolutely gorgeous, and I just really love this color combination. I printed out a digital stamp and a couple digital papers from Graciellie Design, and my printer sometimes will curl the paper, so I'm just using my bone folder to flatten it. And here I'm showing you that I added some perspective to the rustic wood digital paper that I have on the bottom third of the page here, just so that it would look more like a table and have some perspective to it. The plaid background that you see on the top is from Coffee Lovers, and this digital stamp is called Tea for the Soul. So I thought I would want some sketchy lines kind of to mimic the sections of the oranges, but then once I had this down, I decided I didn't like it looking too sketchy, and I wanted more of a solid appearance to the, like you can see the sketchiness of it there. I wanted more of a solid appearance to the heat embossing. So then I decided to come over what I had already embossed with the mixed media brush to add on more of the embossing gel here so that I could get more of a solid embossed layer to these orange sections. Now, these I think are supposed to be lemon slices, especially when you look at the sentiments that come with the set, but I thought orange slices would work just as well. So you can see that there. For the second orange slice, I got a little too carried away with my brush, and so I'm just knocking away some of the powder before I heat emboss it with my craft pick here so that I can bring back those black lines in between the sections. I also take a pen and I will reinforce those lines after heat embossing. I'm going to Copic color this image here, and so for the greens and the leaves, I'm going to use YG61, YG63, and YG67. I'm starting with the darkest color, putting in some flicks at the base of the leaf, the center of the leaf, and then anywhere where Gracie has added in kind of wrinkles to the leaves and folds to the leaves, I'm adding in shadows there. And then I'm blending that out with the mid-tone, which is the YG63, and then filling in the rest of it and softening with the YG61. If anything gets too light, then I'll come back in with my darkest marker and reestablish some of those shadows. I'll have all of the marker colors that I used listed in my blog post, and then as always, I'll have all of the products used listed down below as well for your reference. Before I forget, I do have a discount code, so if you would like to purchase Any of the WOW products from the UK online store or the US online store, use the discount code WOWDTARD. That's WOW Design Team and then my initials ARD. So WOWDTARD, and you'll get a 10% discount at their online stores. So moving on to the orange blossoms and the orange rinds, I'm just using some light colors here. And again, I'll have them all listed in my blog post. And really, it's totally unnecessary to use the number of colors that I used on these orange rinds. I really just kept picking out colors until I felt like it was dark enough and blended enough. So you could use half as many colors as I used. I just didn't use dark enough markers to start with. So I just kept coloring until I liked it. Now for the orange blossoms, I used a combination of YR000, so 000, and then you'll see me come in later with W1 and W3 to add some shadows to those blooms. And I love how soft they came out. And I was a little worried that they would just blend into the background and that tabletop there too much. So I do end up adding a drop shadow closer to the end just to pull them forward a little bit more and separate them from the background. But I do love the color and how they turned out. For the teacup, I decided to make it green only because I didn't want to introduce another color. I felt like there was enough color on this and I didn't want to add another contrasting color. So I just kept it green. I do end up bringing in some gray, and which I felt that was already established in the palette to begin with. So for the teacup, I am using G40, G43, W3, and W5. So right now you just see the G40 and the G43. And here I decided that I would make that little design element gray. But I blended out the center with some green. So it's almost, I kind of was thinking about it as being kind of like a glazed teacup look where you can see the original color underneath the glazing detail that's on the rim, if that makes sense. I don't know. Does that make sense? And so I just added a little bit more green so you could kind of see that through the gray layer. Here I'm going to add some shadow behind these elements because the orange and the flowers would cast a shadow onto the teacup depending on where your light source is. I generally don't worry too much about the light source. I just like to enjoy my coloring, and so I can kind of get caught up in the light source if I think about it too much, but I really mostly focus on where things are overlapping. You know, if they're sitting on top of another object, they're going to cast a shadow. So I just make sure that that makes sense, but aside from that, I don't usually pick, my light sources in the upper right-hand corner or anything like that per se. So here's where I'm going to bring in that shadow, and I believe this is the W3 marker, and this is going to help pull these elements away from the background. It's pretty neutral tones with the washed out greens, and of course these flowers are super light and very similar to the color of the background. So this is going to help pop them forward so that there's some separation between them and the background. So I'm using W3, W5, and W1 for these shadows. Off camera, I also added a little bit of shadow to the orange slice that's sitting on the teacup. I popped up my sentiment. That sentiment is from the digital stamp. I just printed it at the bottom of the paper and then just trimmed out a sentiment strip from it. And I love how the embossing powders look on these orange slices. I think it's a really unique effect having this kind of embossing with the Copic marker. I just really like the look of this card. And so I popped up that panel and put it on an A2 card base. Here you can see the cards together. I hope that you enjoyed these projects today and will give them a try. If you do, we'd love to see what you're creating, so tag us at WOW Embossing and Notable Ink. And be sure to check out our Facebook page as well. I'll have links below to that so that you can head over that way. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you real soon with more inspiration.